Hello everyone, I am Dr. Candace Cooper. I want to thank you all for considering me for submitting a video interview for assistant professor position at Clayton State University Psychology program. Your program definitely stood out to me as I was applying to faculty positions in the Atlanta area, which is where I would love to relocate, which is where I will be relocating. It just seems like it's a great place, provides a lot of opportunities for advancement in my career. So when I saw the program and its focus on multiculturalism, I was very intrigued. And I also saw the research interests of the faculty, which I was also very intrigued by, particularly someone who had a focus on intimate partner violence and another with a focus on the social justice piece. I also looked at some of the courses that you provided, which was on multiculturalism, diversity, very important courses that I feel most programs don't offer. And to be honest, in my undergraduate psychology program, there were no courses on diversity or cultural competency or courses of folks from disenfranchised populations. So I was very intrigued by those things. I also like the fact that you all prepare your students to go out into the field, which is something that, once again, I didn't have during my undergraduate or my graduate school career, especially when it came to things such as licensure, which I wish I learned more about, and insurance and billing and things of that nature, which I feel would be very valuable information to have during your schooling. So I definitely was interested in that, and I was very impressed by that as well. I also like the piece on making your students more technologically advanced. I see that not only as a program but as an institution, which I feel is very important. I say in my office, I'm the techie, or the one that's the most savvy when it comes to technology, because I feel it's so important. And when you don't have those skills, it makes things a little more difficult, or it makes the job a little more difficult to navigate when you don't have those skills, especially if the majority of your work has to be on a computer, or you have to use some type of internet or technology or things of that sort. So I think this was pretty cool to be able to have the opportunity to submit a video interview, which is the first time that I've ever done this before. So once again, I thank you. With regards to, I guess, my qualifications or characteristics, I feel, first of all, I am very determined, very passionate about the things that I speak about, particularly with social justice and, privilege in certain areas, subjugation, those things I will hone in on. I will have conversations for hours on those topics. So I feel that my passion and my drive and my skill to have a critical eye and to continuously challenge the dominant discourse is very important to me. And I feel like that's something I would be that would be a good fit within your program. Like I said, once again, it focuses on multiculturalism, and I'm sure social justice comes into play as well. I feel that those things would definitely be a good fit. I am by training a couple of family therapists, and once again, within my graduate studies, we learned a lot about social justice and how we can challenge, like I said, those dominant systems, how we challenge oppression among the different isms, challenging sexism, challenging heterosexism, challenging racism, just the isms across the board, and that it was embedded throughout all of my programs. So in every class that we had, those things came up, those topics were had, those issues were discussed, which a lot of times challenged me, not just intellectually but also personally and emotionally as well. So I feel like those experiences, I believe, would bring more to the program, because I feel like it would be an even greater fit between myself and the program, as it seemed like we share very similar beliefs. With regard to my experiences and knowledge on multicultural, cross-cultural psychology, I've had, like I said, once again, a lot of experience in learning about multiculturalism and understanding the ways in which race, class, gender, sexual orientation shape our worldview and how we navigate the world, and also how we navigate relationships, which I feel, in my mind, relational health is mental health. So I feel that the way we operate in the world has to do with our lens, and it has to do with our race and our ethnicities, most definitely, which is something that oftentimes people fail to see. It's been plenty of conversation that I had with others regarding issues surrounding race particularly, that I feel like there are still some blind spots there with regards to understanding how white supremacy plays a role in the lives of people of color particularly. I was just looking at Oprah and Ayanna talking about colorism, which is so nuanced and so layered, that oftentimes we don't even recognize how the dominant, once again I use dominant discourse a lot, or how white supremacy kind of shapes our experiences as people of color. So I feel that in the context of therapy, I often pick up on those little things. For example, I had a client share that he had a light-skinned girlfriend and she thought she was normal. And so my thing was, so what are you saying about people of darker skin, that they're not normal? So those things I was taught to continuously challenge. So it's like second nature for me to immediately pick up on those things. So I feel that with students, being able to recognize the ways in which they see the world and how their experiences or their areas of subjugation shape the way they see other people, the way they see other students, the way they see their parents, their families, can be a very powerful experience. I know it was for me. That it was things that I couldn't really articulate until I had professors to challenge me and push me in areas that I didn't even recognize was there. For example, in my master's program interview, he asked me, mind you, I was the only African American person in a room full of white people, how I felt when I walked in a store and I was being followed. And for me, it was very awkward. And, the first thing I could say was I felt like they were looking at me like I was crazy, like I was from another planet, things like that. But no one, especially no one white, had ever asked me such a question in that way. So that was kind of I guess, as Oprah would say, aha moment for me with regards to those things. So I feel like those things with students could help them see things a little differently, or not necessarily see things differently, but can kind of open their eyes. Like, oh yeah, I noticed that is there, but I don't really notice it. You know what I mean? So because oftentimes those things get internalized, they get embedded, and it just becomes the way it is. So I think by highlighting those things, it can empower students. Even when working with white students, I feel like it can be very empowering to challenge them and to push them. There have been times where they have been triggered, but I feel like I've seen so much growth just among my colleagues, some great people that I feel can challenge racial discrimination and all those things before I do at times, which is quite impressive, but that they understand the ways in which their white privilege plays a role in their perspective, in their view of the world, and their view of relationships with people from different ethnicities and different races. Because I do include whites in multiculturalism, oftentimes we assume that white people don't have a race when they in fact do have a race. So I feel like those things and those viewpoints that I have help to challenge and empower clients, because it's helping them to see and for them to recognize, you're putting words to my experience that I can't articulate myself. As far as like the faculty position or my ideal faculty position, I absolutely love to teach. I kind of fell into this because some years ago I told my professor, I would never do that. I don't think, I'm more of a clinician. I'm not much of a teacher or a researcher. But I'm so great that I had this opportunity to teach at Buffalo State College. I actually really enjoyed it a whole lot, and I felt like I was really comfortable. Like the first class initially, I was very nervous, but I studied the material. I knew my stuff. I just was myself the entire time. I gave them my experiences and my knowledge, and it really was an enjoyable experience. When the chair of the department came in, she came and sat in on my class, and she was like, "You're such a natural. Like, you seem a little ambivalent to even want to teach a class." And I told her I was, because I didn't think that was something I would want to do. But so I'm glad that I had the experience, because it wasn't a position I even applied for. She just asked me if I wanted to teach because I supervised one of her students. So I'm glad that I said yes, absolutely, because it definitely motivated me to even apply to this position here. So I would say I would like, about, 50% of the teaching, another 30% of the research, but I really, really, really enjoy mentorship and clinical supervision. I feel like that's my strength. With regards to that, research is good too. My dissertation was a qualitative study on African American experiences of witnessing intimate partner violence and its impacts on self identity and development, and in African Americans, low income African American youth. So I feel like I've grown to love research, because I was thinking I had so many research experiences during my undergraduate and my graduate career. I know it pretty well. There's always room for growth, and always times for me to things for me to learn more of. So I do love research when it's clinically applicable. So if I can transfer this research into a clinical application which will build for a future intervention for a particular population, then I am happy to do that. Where it's difficult for me is where where I try to figure out where is there's research where it can't be applied. Because I've worked with mentors who had research where I was trying to understand how is this going to better serve the human race, if you want to say, and even more so, how is it going to serve a particular community? And for me, I'm very passionate about the African American community. So I think the research piece would be good, but the mentorship has taken me very far. My mentor during my PhD program is absolutely amazing woman, Marlene Watson, who really took me under her wing. And I think a lot of times, if it wasn't for her, I know I wouldn't have made it through my doctoral program. Just her continued belief in me, seeing the things in me that I couldn't even see in myself, is what got me through with regards to mentorship. So I feel like that's a huge piece that I would love to do in the clinical piece with clinical supervision, and helping students with internship will also be a great opportunity with regards to a faculty position and what that would look like for me. When working with diverse student populations, I have at Buffalo State, I've worked primarily, my class is pretty mixed. I have quite a few adult learners who have children, who are married, who have full-time jobs in my class. I have younger people who also work, but who primarily just focus on going to school at this point. I have people from international places. It was a woman, she is from, I forget. I know it's in Europe. And she's definitely very amazing. I love her as a student. I also have African American students, white students. I mean, it's across the board. It's a good pool. It's a good mixture. So I definitely had the opportunity to work with diverse student populations. With regard to diversity related research, like I stated earlier, I'm very passionate about working and focusing on particularly African American populations. It might broaden as time goes on, working with other populations to understand the phenomenon of intimate partner violence and its effects on youth in particular, not just from the African American race, but from various races. And the goal is to provide and shape and create interventions that's geared toward a particular population, because every population is different, not only across race but across class, which I found in my research to be very significant. That's why I focused on low income, because there is high amounts of community violence and chronic exposure to trauma, which is does have a direct relationship with intimate partner violence in communities. So I definitely have had a lot of experiences in undergraduate school, where I had the opportunity to work with one of my mentors, Lorraine Collins, who focused on malt liquor use in low-income minority populations, which was really a big thing. Back then, I was interested in alcohol and its impacts on aggression and violence in relationships. So I worked with her because she wanted to look at the use of malt liquor in minority populations and how much it would impact violence, not only in intimate relationships, but relationships in general. I also had research experiences in working with my mentor on African American women and breast cancer. My other mentor on looking at domestic violence in African American relationships. So I have quite a few experiences. Also looking at body image, which is something I'm finding myself becoming more interested in with regards to colorism, which is becoming a big deal, which is something that I really want to hone in on. I've had opportunities to speak monthly on a local radio show in Buffalo, New York, talking about race, colorism, domestic violence within the context of African American community, and also focusing on destigmatizing mental health in the African American community in particular, and the role of the church, which I'm also very interested in. Which I kind of answered the follow-up question, which is my research interest. And with regards to integrating graduates and undergraduates in the research, I definitely believe in giving them the full experience. I have been lucky enough to have great mentors who had me very much involved in the research process, such as recruiting clients, taking part in the data analysis, learning SPSS, also taking part in the qualitative analysis, which is very extensive in comparison to the quantitative. Both very important. I feel that the students will have opportunities to work under me directly to learn about the research process, to also ask them about what their research interests are, especially if they're along the lines of my research interests, and having the ability and the opportunity to present research at conferences. In my undergraduate career, I was able to do a presentation of my mentor's research where she got to sit in the audience and watch me present on her work, which is very great. It was very empowering. She was very proud of me. It was so helpful. It gave me validation to know that I was able to do such a thing. You know, at that time it was like nerve-wracking. I still get nervous when I have to do a presentation, but it's becoming a little less difficult, I'd say. And as my mentor always says, you become friends with your anxiety, which is what I did. So for students, I will definitely want to have them have the hands-on opportunity and also presenting at research conferences, especially if they're interested in graduate school. But even if they're not, I just think it's a great opportunity and a great experience. So based on my experiences, like I said, I was hands-on. I did the recruitment. I did the interviews with clients, with participants, I apologize, phone screen interviews. So I was in just as researcher along with the rest of the research team in all of my experiences as an undergraduate and a graduate student. With regards to my philosophy of teaching, I am very much experiential and interactive. I like to challenge students in their world views and help them to grow not only intellectually, as like I said myself, but also emotionally. You know, oftentimes I feel that students need to get challenged. They're at a critical point in their lives where, you know, after graduation, they're going to go out into the field or even go into graduate school and have to interact with different types of people. So I feel challenging some of their worldviews and their blind spots are very important. And these things I feel are done, like I said, through interactive exercises. For example, I had my class, we had a topic on supervision and leadership. So I created little role plays and had the students break up into groups of 8, and they had to act out the situation within the supervision context, ethical dilemmas in particular. One was on race and racism. One was on sexual orientation discrimination. So it challenged students to think about, okay, how will I handle this situation and what's wrong here? Because I have to ask them or even push them to see things in a different perspective. Also having those difficult conversations and dialogues in my class, you know, it's kind of hard for me to not use a multicultural social justice perspective. This class was on human service organizations, but I still found a way to incorporate a social justice perspective and a multicultural perspective within that conversation and within that class, which got students to thinking about how race influences their interactions with other, how class influences their interactions, gender, which challenges to help them challenge those notions with regards to the oppressive systems that are in place within this particular society, not just society, but the world. But I teach them that for our clients, we have to be advocates We do deal with relational issues, we do deal with emotional problems, but I feel like it's doing the client a disservice when we don't look at the ways in which their race, their class, their gender, their sexual orientation play a role into their emotional distress or their relational issues, or even their mental illness in a lot of respects. So I feel like it's very important for me to challenge those things. I also like to do in and outside of class interactive experiences. I could say I had an experience where my teacher had us wanted us to know what it was like to be on welfare. So we had to go downtown. We couldn't drive our cars. We had to catch the bus. We had to wait in line and actually fill out an application so we can get the full experience of what it's like to be in this position. And that's the role that I play as a professor with the students. I want them to have the full hands-on, interactive, intimate experience with a particular topic, with a particular population, whatever it is that we're learning. So I also believe in the use of videos. I love showing videos where it's applicable to get people to thinking, and to have a dialogue about it. Like I said, I'm all open for dialogue and difficult conversation because that's where the most growth comes in. Also, with regard to the teaching, I feel that I am definitely most comfortable with the multiculturalism piece in psychology, cross-cultural psychology, research methods, and ethics. I'm in ethnics. I'm sorry. All those things I'm very comfortable in. The only piece where I will have to strengthen is the statistics piece. I did good in those classes. However, it was a really great effort to do that. So that would be one of the pieces where I would be least comfortable. However, I'm willing to try whatever it is to try. The only way I learn is if I do it. So I'm very comfortable with all of those topics. I know them very well. And there's always room for me to grow as well. So there may be some things I don't know, but I do to the best of my ability. I will research it and make it so that the students will understand what it is that I understood and took in and read. With regards to supervising student research, I have not supervised student research, but I do currently supervise student internships at my job. I am it's Heart Foundation it's called, and it's helping to empower at-risk teens. So a lot of interns come, graduate students. I supervise the graduate students from different colleges and universities in the Buffalo, New York area. And so I'm very familiar with clinical supervision. I use a self of the therapist perspective, which is being aware of the self and how it impacts your relationship with your client. And so it's very important for me to help the students understand their triggers, the things that they feel, would make a client would have a client have them become reactive, which I feel is very important, and to understand how their worldview and how that can impact a relationship with a client as well. I oftentimes challenge students in their interpersonal relationships with regards to our supervisory relationship. It was a student one time I told her I noticed she intellectualizes a lot. And I told her, could you imagine how a client would feel if you intellectualizing and stating, oh, I'm using this theory on you right now, I'm using this model on you right now. I told her it disengages her from the client, and the client doesn't feel connected to her, but to have her focus on becoming more in tune with her heart instead of her head, which is very important. But I'm very perceptive with the way people interact with one another, and I notice little things right away, which I feel could influence their therapeutic relationship with their clients. Also, I've done also do videos with my interns, and I help them to understand what their personal philosophy of therapy is. I feel like that's very important, which is something that I'm glad I had an opportunity to do during my doctoral program, where I had to write my paper on my philosophy of therapy, which is on interviews that I've had clinically. They ask that, so I have them try to understand what their personal philosophy of therapy is, and also how they understand problems in families, how they understand dysfunction, how they understand healthy families or healthy individuals. Also, I believe my goal in supervision is to have the supervisory relationship be isomorphic into the client therapist relationship. So the type of dynamics, interactions that we have in our supervision should transfer over into the client therapist relationship. That's the goal that I see in supervision, as well as understanding, meeting them where they are in their professional development. With regard to any additional information with regards to this position, once again, I've had a lot of presentation opportunities, have a lot of opportunities coming up. I actually have a conference that I'll be presenting at down there next June in Athens, Georgia, and the American Family Therapy Association on healthcare and mental health in minority populations or populations of color, along with a couple of my colleagues that I went to my doctoral program with. So I'm conducting a couple of trainings in June in Buffalo. I'm helping to create a cognitive ecological model for court-involved youth, particularly youth of color from low-income communities that I'm working with along with my colleague and my boss to create an intervention and for youth utilizing the lens of post-traumatic growth, which is a big piece that we wanted to focus on with this particular population, because a lot of kids that we see have experienced a lot of trauma and they are finding ways to deal with that. And they're actually getting better by the end of the program. And so we were trying to make sense out of what do we call this. And I've had colleagues who've done research on post-traumatic growth, which was fitting for the model that we are trying to create at this point. So we're giving trainings and things like that. I'm also doing a radio show, so I'm very busy to be a new PhD. I just got it last year, and a lot of things have come in to play for me, and I've had a lot of great opportunities. As well as being promoted right away to clinical director at my agency. It was very scary, intimidating at first, but I'm starting to get used to it. But at this point, I'm ready for a new chapter in my life, and I'm ready to move forward, and I'm definitely looking forward to the new move, because either way I'll be moving down. I plan to move sometime in July, so I'm definitely happy about that, and I'm looking for a new opportunity. So once again, I do thank you all for considering me for this position, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you.